Thank you for coming and talk to me, Grigorii. I've been in a company for not too long, so I like to know the people that I'm working with. And when I heard that we had an architect, a proper architect in the company, I had to come and talk to you. So, can you tell us a little bit? I'm very interested in your background and trying to understand where do you come from, what's your background, and what made you come to Victoria VR.
Okay, thank you for coming, Loic, as well. I started to work in Victoria VR since the very beginning of the company. It was around 2.5 years ago, I think, and the work was interesting in the beginning, and it's getting even more interesting now. When we started, I was one of the first person who came to the company, and I was the only one architect who was creating the project. At the moment, we have more than 8 architects who are working in a big group, and each of us are making their own projects there. So the first thing that we started to work, it was the first imagination of the world, how it could look like. I mean, the landscape, where it should situate it, how the islands where all the cities will be, how it will look like. And so we started from the landscape. After that, when people started to come and the company started to grow, we had the bigger opportunities to work on it, and that's why we started to make different cities, different villages. And at the moment, we have 8 people who are working on each of the city that are going to be published in 2-4 months, and probably interesting.
Okay, so you're telling me about the work in Victoria, and that's very cool, and we're going to talk about that. But before anything, I'm more interested in how does an architect by trade become a architect for a digital project? Did you think that you would end up in a game company when you started your studies? What kind of architect studies did you do before coming to Victoria?
Yeah, it was also an interesting topic because, for example, if you would ask me about my work maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I wouldn't imagine me working in game development. But 3 or 4 years ago, I started to think about changing a bit the way that I'm working.
So what were you working on before?
I've been working as a normal architect, but the thing that I didn't like about normal architecture, that it's way too long. That, for example, here in Czech Republic, I have to wait probably 10 years for your building to be built. And here in game development, and especially here in Victoria VR, we're able to create, for example, in a city, the whole city in half a year, and you're able to have a look on it, to walk on the streets. So you see the project, the thing that you're doing, really fast. And in a difference with normal architecture, here you can do whatever you want. It's really creative one. You can play with gravity. You can do whatever you want, and it's much more interesting, I would say, in comparing with a normal architecture that's I used to work before.
So does that mean, do you think you're achieving your dream in terms of the things that you thought about building when you started your career as an architect? You probably had an inspiration for some sort of building or whatever made you study architecture, and then as you came to Victoria VR, and now you can build digitally, basically for a metaverse. Then are you achieving that dream of building the type of architecture and building that you like?
Definitely, and especially I like it in VR because for me it gives, I don't know, I would say more sense or something like that, more feeling of that you're creating something, for example, in comparing with a PC game. Mm-hmm. When you just see it on a screen. Here you can enter the building, walk the streets that you made and you created, and I really like that feeling.
So do you think there's actually you bring a very good point, the virtual reality part, which is, do you think there is some sort of challenge to bring your creations in VR versus bringing it on a flat screen?
Yeah, it is. It is. Especially it's because of technical things of Oculus and technical things of VR that you have to deal with, I would say.
Can you maybe tell us, without going, of course, let's pretend that our audience is not too savvy in terms of architecture, like me, basically.
Yeah.
So let's not go too deep into details, but is there something you could tell us about these type of challenge that you mentioned? With
Yes, of course. And I think this is the challenges that all of our architects has faced with during the work. Like in comparing with normal architecture, you have to think about like mostly game stuff, like the way how it will be interesting for users. But when you're making the normal architecture, I mean like in real life, you have to think about comfort, about like statics of the building, and you spend a lot of time, like just like for example counting if the building would stand, and making things like canalization and that stuff. And here you don't have to care about this thing, and it's just like creative job. So you don't waste your time on counting something, but you're just making the art, I would say.
Okay, well, it's very interesting. So tell us a little bit more then about your team now. It's like, from what I understand, you are the lead architect, meaning that you supervise a team. So how do you organize your team? How do you manage the team?
I would also like to start from the beginning, if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course.
Because for the first year of the company, I've been working as only one architect, and I was doing like more like the most creative part of the project, I would say. But as soon as people started to come there, at the moment I spent more time on like leading the team. And the guys who are working with us are making that creative job that I made, for example, 2 years ago. So that's why, like, sometimes I feel a bit sad that I have to spend more time on managing the team, but at the same time we have really talented team, and at the moment we are making the projects of 8 cities. Each of the cities are absolutely different from another. They all of the cities are based on the feng shui, but we are trying to make them like really different. And for example, the wood cities that will be situated on the high trees, and you can walk around the trees and go through the wooden buildings. Or I don't know, like for example, metal city. It's going to be like hanging spaceships above the normal cities, and where we apply the gravity. For example, the inspiration of that city was the movie Inception. Like from Inception, yes, from Christopher Nolan.
Yep.
And like it's really creative job, and like we have a lot of things to show.
So what's your impact now that you're telling me that basically your team now is creating because you're kind of like step back a little bit and kind of like supervise, but what's your creative impact on that team? I guess that you still have some
Yes,
influence,
for sure. Like for sure, we have all the time meetings and presentation of our ideas and like brainstormings of everything. And that's why like we're also making like together helping each other with, for example, ideas and like help like. So I would say that I'm still making that creative job, but it's more like helping others with their projects.
So your team, let's talk about them a little bit. You told me there's 8 people now that are working?
8 people, yeah.
Okay, so what are you looking into when you recruited them? What kind of like skill, what kind of background profile were you looking for? Because were you looking for someone with some game experience, with the same type of background that you have? Tell us a bit more about that.
Yes, like first of all, like the first thing that we're looking in people to hire, like in order to work as an architect here, it's like the creativity. I would say that it's the main one, because like skills in some programs, you can just try to work there and you can improve it. But creativity is something more different, more difficult to improve and to get. So this is the first one, and also the. We're looking if somebody really wants to do this job, because it's also important. About like game background, it's also very important. But some of our architects didn't have it, and they are still in the process of getting it. But this is the thing that could come as well.
Okay. So you would put basically the creativity.
Creativity would be the first one, yeah, and the wish to work and to learn stuff. I mean,
the desire to progress and
for
to
sure.
keep learning, which is, I think, not only for architecture, like
for everyone.
Should be the same. Should have the same drive, right? So, do you have any atypical, kind of like uncommon profile among your team? Like, tell us a bit about them. Sorry, where do they come from? Do you have anything interesting to tell about them?
Oh yeah, we have a rather multinational team, I would say,
Okay.
and like we're switching off with three languages. Mostly, it's like English, Czech, Russian. We have people from Belarus, from Russia, from Czech Republic. Uh, like most of the people who came here, I knew before, and I know that they're great architects. And for some of them, it was a challenge to work here, but everyone is making good it by now.
Cool, cool. So let's talk about then. You mentioned feng shui and you mentioned 8 cities that you are building. So can you tell the audience a little bit more about, without going too deep, because anyway we're gonna have a talk with feng shui master Robert at some point. But if you can tell us a little bit about the elements and how does feng shui and architecture intertwined in a world like Victoria VR?
Oh, I'm afraid that it will be a bit longer discussion about how the feng shui influence our way of working and the way we are urbanize our cities, like making the cities. But in 2 words, I would say that it's making the styles like the main character of the city. So from feng shui, we get that, for example, this city should be like more sustainable, calm, and like higher buildings or something like that. So we get these parameters from our feng shui master, and after that we use them, but we have to follow them. But we're making our own imagination and making our projects, but using this information that we get from that. Of course, there are a lot more things that we had to learn with feng shui, but basically it's the main influence of our work. Okay. So the truth, I've heard of feng shui the last time it was in a school we had some kind of lectures, but as I entered, I had to learn feng shui to tell the truth.
Like all of us,
yeah.
It's not too common in the West, which is a great thing. Okay, good. Then I guess we're kind of done here. I mean, I think we got a good idea of where you're coming from, and then we look forward to see your work, and we'll probably do some more coverage of the work coming from you and your team. So thank you, Grigorii, to be with us, for being
thank you.
with us, and then let's talk more at a later date.
Yes, thank you.
Cheers.
Yeah.